Hi everybody, this is Zork. As usual, you know who I am, or at least now you do now that you're watching the video. Today I'm going to do something I normally don't do. I've done movie reviews, I've done trailer reviews, but I've never done this style before. What I'm going to do is I'm going to get you guys a quick up-to-date recap on who Captain Marvel is. Not the Captain Marvel we're exactly seeing in the movie, but the character of Captain Marvel. A lot of her, at least what I hope to be portrayal in the movie, will come from some of the original comic books that happened back, I want to say, early 60s, 70s, and on through to the 2000s, and then about 2013, there's a big important event that happens for the character. I'm going to do a quick recap on everything as quick as I can. Hopefully this video won't be too long, but I do want people to at least know where the character comes from, and kind of how they got their start, and where the steps came in between. But I guess I'll start off at the very beginning. We were introduced to Captain Marvel in 1967 by Stan Lee and Gene Colan. Gene Colan was the creator of Daredevil, which, I mean, honestly, Daredevil has been one of the strongest characters Marvel has seen in the past couple of years. But the issue was Marvel Superheroes number 12. Originally, the character was green, had like a white costume, very different from what we're seeing in the movies. But honestly, there's a little bit of a missed history there. Originally, the character's name was not Captain Marvel. It was Mar-Vell. It was actually a mispronunciation from a lot of the main characters we see in the typical Marvel universe. He was a Kree military officer tasked with the reconnaissance of humanity, because we were slowly getting more to the international, like interstellar travel. Anyway, or Captain Mar-Vell, his alien DNA and the technology known as negabands bestowed upon him the power to absorb solar energy from stars, sunlight, the very things that and then redirect it at his enemies. He possessed incredible strength, speed, a regenerative factor, flight, and there's this weird power he has called the cosmic awareness. I'm going to get a little bit into that later on, but this is more of a introduction, so I'm not going to really deep dive too heavily into that one, because it comes up very often in the character's progression. But anyway, he started off very small, but after a couple years of popularity and becoming a recurring character for other issues with the Fantastic Four, the Avengers, and obviously the Guardians of the Galaxy, we see him kind of take more of a centralized focus and became a recurring character for Marvel. Eventually, he does end up actually staying more on Earth as its main defender. After he kind of separates himself from the Kree Empire, essentially, and eventually he teams up with Spider-Man. This is not a bad thing, but this inevitably leads to the death of Captain Marvel in 1982 by the villain Nitro. It was one of Marvel's longest actual first graphic novels, is what we'll call for it. His death was very impactful on the comic book universe, as it was a recurring character and has not seen him really come back until a couple reissues after like 30 years of him being gone. So it's very important about this sort of a situation. The Death of Captain Marvel issue was ranked in the top 25 greatest Marvel comic books of all time, and definitely has earned this spot. But the kicker was, he didn't really die just due to the gases and, traditional superhero deaths of, he got shot walking up some stairs, or, had to sacrifice himself for the greater good. No, he died of inoperable cancer. A very realistic and human death in comparison to most comic books. Most comic books really typically, when you see death, don't really address this. I mean, it's usually some sort of fantastical way that they die, cell degradation, disintegration, these more extravagant deaths. And this is a very real death, like a very common thing that can happen. People get cancer all the time. But for him, it was more of a, It was more realistic for him. So we see a lot of long-running consequences just due to this fact. So this is a very big and important issue. If you ever get a chance, please read this comic book. But in 1982, he dies, which then leaves a new open spot for more heroes to come in. And in 1982, very same year, later on in that year, we were actually introduced into the second Captain Marvel, Monica Rambeau. The audience was in diehard need of more Captain Marvel. He was a very popular character, very recurring, and arguably a lot of people, they killed him in his prime, which, in my opinion, was a good move, because after that, it was the decline. So she remained. Monica Rambeau was one of the first African-American superheroes to adopt what is arguably male white character role. She replaced him from 1982 to about 1996, where another captain was involved. Like I said, I'll get into this a little bit later. But she was renamed Photon, and then later on years became Pulsar and Spectrum. she changed names a lot. She was a very recurring character and had a lot of influence over the years. She played a great backup hero. She was almost in every single like major comic book, crossover group. Worked with the X-Men a couple times. Worked with the Avengers pretty much almost every issue. But she even later became the leader of the Avengers. I want to say maybe 2 years or so she was leader of the Avengers and had to step down eventually upon losing her powers. She was one of the few people of the Captain Marvel universe to meet another Captain Marvel. I mean, we see in the original Captain Marvel him meet the later on Carol Danvers, but this was the first time that actually we see the direct lineage passed on. She did not die. She actually met the third Captain Marvel named Genus Vell. Genus Vell is the third official Captain Marvel of the cinematic and total, not cinematic, but the comic book universe, if you will. He was introduced in 1993 as the character Legacy in the Silver Surfer Annual number 6. He hits a couple tropes of classic characters from the comic book universes. He's not even like a genetic... I mean, he's a genetic offspring of Captain Marvel, but he's not actually the official offspring. He was genetically engineered from a chunk of his DNA that was given to the Titans. His powers paralleled that of Captain Marvel. The only problem was that eventually, through massive emotional breakdowns and a suffering in his faulty cosmic awareness, actually caused dramatic issues throughout the comic books. He went through a faulty aging process because for him to technically be the age that he would have been, he would have only been about maybe 10 or 12 in the actual comic book universe, but due to an artificial aging process, he was aged up through the comics by use of, MacGuffin science fiction. But the cause of that caused his character to have mental breakdown. He flip-flopped between hero, anti-hero, and villain very continuously up until about 2006, where he died in issue number 100 of the Thunderbolts, where he was separated piece by piece by Baron Zemo and released into the darkest parts of space, so that he could not be reknitted, reassembled, and accidentally break the universe because of that cosmic awareness. It's regarded as one of the more impactful deaths of the Captain Marvel franchise. His comic book was very shortly run, but I really do recommend check out some of the issues that feature him in it. He is a very good character, but he does leave a little bit to be desired. Throughout the early to mid 2000s, though, we had a very large amount of Captain Marvel replacements. There were 3 captains that appeared. There was Phyla-Vell, Knurr, and Novar. I'm trying to pronounce Knurr right there. I'm not really sure. There's no consonants. They each adopted the mantle of Captain Marvel in their own unique way. Most of them were for quick, short transitions between the characters, where there was one that, from Glorious Battle, they were given the title of Captain Marvel, not the actual powers, but just the title. There was a butterfly effect that kind of moved things around, inverted brainwashing, the death of certain characters moved it from others, and then there was even just a form of mistaken identity where someone's like, "You're Captain Marvel," and they just gave him the title and the power, and he was like, "Okay, sure, I'm Captain Marvel." But it was all over the place just from the constant revamping, recycling, and just they couldn't seem to get it right to fit with the audience at the time, so they kept moving it around to find the right spot. But then, finally, in 2013, we finally got Carol Danvers. Now, she had been a character from about 1968, the year after Captain Marvel was created. But they created her to be as a side character at first until 1977. Where upon a DNA transfusion, she became Miss Marvel. The same powers as Captain Marvel, an ally that he had for years to come. And honestly, she was a really good and solid cementing block. She became a member of the Avengers. She had the exact same powers as him, so she adopted the exact same roles and same teammates. Guardians of the Galaxy were a constant team up with her. The Fantastic Four teamed up with her. Team Excalibur, the New Mutants. She befriended the X-Men, she dated Spider-Man for a little bit, and fought alongside the Avengers and became the leader of the Avengers in certain issues. But she officially joined them in 2013 as the Avengers Assemble series, which is what the first Avengers movie is based off of. She obviously didn't appear in the movie, but that was the storyline that really brought her as a main character. Now, that's kind of the most solid recap I can without ruining things that could happen in this movie. I can talk a little bit about the basic levels of this movie that's coming up, but I at least wanted to give you a recap of where they come from and where they sort of started as to kind of put. Now here is where I'm going to talk about the movie. If you do not want to have anything spoiled for this, please feel free to pause this video. Please move on. watch something else in the situation similar to it. Learn more about this character. I really think people really should like Captain Marvel. She's a very powerful character and has a great lineage behind her, as she has been. The character Captain Marvel has existed since the 60s. Please do yourself a favor. At least read The Death of Captain Marvel, one of the most impactful comics of all time. Now, that being said, I'm going to be talking about the movie once again. We seem to have the Kree Skrull Wars. I was not actually a huge fan of this one when I first read it. It took me a while to really kind of get behind it. I see what they're doing, and it's very well done. But honestly, the follow-up arc for me was the most impactful of Carol Danvers' run as Captain Marvel. It seemed itself as more as a political thriller, maybe espionage, think like spies and stuff like that, as it kind of deals with the concept of who is that person behind that face. Very quirky, I guess is a good way to put it. I almost would put that one on par with the Civil War comics, but I'm not going to talk about that. I'm not going to worry about the new storylines. I'm at least going to go ahead and list off the people that were involved in the original Skrull Kree War. Skrull Kree War. I just realized I said that wrong. My bad. Anyway, but the lineup consisted of Iron Man, Scarlet Witch, Quicksilver, the Fantastic Four, Wasp, Ant-Man, Captain America, Thor, Nick Fury, Black Bolt, Maximus, and Goliath. Pretty heavy casting list. Obviously, we're not going to see that play out in this movie, as most of these characters either have already been introduced or can't really be introduced again. As this takes place in the 80s, we can easily tell thanks to the whole blockbuster success. I think we can easily set this up as just kind of, the introduction to who Captain Marvel is. Cut out all the other people. We'll see Nick Fury obviously pop up, but I think that's really about as far as we're going to go. I personally would have liked to see this one more fleshed out, because I was hoping we were going to get introduced to the supergroup known as the Illuminati. The problem is that would require the X-Men as well as Doctor Strange to exist in this part of the time period, and that's not going to happen. So honestly, keep an eye out for this movie. I know they're going to tweak a couple things here and there. We're going to see probably some recurring characters from previous movies. I think we're going to have a really good time on this one, so just kind of look forward to the movie. Okay, so now that we're past that, I'm going to go ahead and leave you guys with some questions. Things that you can ponder, question for yourself on the actual validation for this movie coming up. I'm going to have my own theories. I will state the question, and then I'll give my thoughts on it. You are totally welcome to, leave something down below in the comment section explaining your own opinions or perspectives on it. I would very much like to see those. Just remember, though, do not spoil the movie. If you see the movie, do not go in here and say, hey, you were wrong in, the first couple days. Please give everybody, a week just to speculate. Let us all just think for, a week after the movie comes out, so it gives people plenty of time to work their ideas in and see how the movie's going to turn out. And then once the week is up, you are I'm going to go ahead, give everybody a stamp of approval. You are free to put down in the comments section, but please put up at the top, spoiler. After that, after the week, sure, do what you need to. But if you're going to put it like that in the top, please put spoiler. Okay, so my first question is, to what extent are we going to see her powers? Like I said, she has the exact same powers as Captain Marvel. So we're going to see a lot of, flashy combat, the use of the energy absorption, strength, flying, healing, speed. I'm totally okay with that. However, the question really kind of boils down to, what exactly is cosmic awareness? Cosmic awareness, in my opinion, is more of a meta power. The ability, the force. It's I sense something's wrong. Sort of like a balancing situation. Essentially, it's, in my opinion, the writer telling people, hey, prepare yourself, something will change. Or, hey, something is going here, I must direct this character this way. It's a MacGuffin power. I don't think it's on the similar levels of what we see with Deadpool with the fourth wall breaking. I mean, that's really kind of his thing. But it's similar to the style, where they can use the fourth wall as kind of a bouncing plate. They will address directly to, something's wrong. Like a Spidey sense is technically almost a smaller level cosmic awareness in its own weird way. It's its own cosmic awareness. Something as bad is going to happen to Spider-Man. So I think that's what we're going to kind of see, but I'm not sure what level we're going to play at. I mean, if we're talking, the Earth is unbalanced or something like that, or, something just feels wrong, we'll see what happens. The next thing we're going to see is this is the first time that we're getting to see the Skrulls. Skrulls are very kind of your common foot soldiers sort of style enemies of a lot of the Avengers and the universe as well, because they're very espionage oriented. But the question I'm going to beg is, with the Skrulls on the table, are we going to get a look at their impact on their and our society and what the snap from Infinity War will cause? So that's going to be really kind of a tricky thing. mainly because we're 20 years before the snap, but we're going to get to the snap, and I think that's the point. I hope that we're going to see what the snap does, similar to what they did with Ant-Man and Wasp. Leaving it open-ended isn't a bad option, similar to what they did with like Ant-Man. I mean, he was, for those who don't know, in Ant-Man and the Wasp, spoiler alert, at the very end, Ant-Man is trapped in the quantum realm because everybody else on the other side of the portal essentially has dissipated and turned to dust. So I believe they can leave this decision open-ended and even not tell us. But honestly, looking at the release schedule, we're talking March is when Captain Marvel, like the 8th is when Captain Marvel shows, and then next month we get Endgame. I mean, that is a very short amount of turnaround time. They're probably going to set something up with a very high cliffhanger that's going to get people to go like, okay, I have to go see Endgame. So I don't think we're going to see a full payoff for it, but we will see more in, obviously, the next Avengers movie. Honestly, there was only 4 imposters in the comic books for the Skrulls entering into our society. They've retconned that over and over again, saying there was more, and then like, oh, we missed one, there's more than that. But I hope we're going to see more, them be more numerous this time. I want to see how they've infiltrated society, the numbers that they've brought in. I want it to be very numerous and have if you've ever seen it, the movie They Live, I hope we really see a lot more of that sort of style, like where they're literally integrated into our society, and we don't even know. To an extent, like it's almost every other person. I kind of would like to see that. I really would. The next question I have is, how does S.H.I.E.L.D. play into this? Honestly, S.H.I.E.L.D. is very kind of mysteriously organized, especially in the cinematic universe. In the comic books, it's very laid out. I mean, we saw a lot of it from the original days, and Nick Fury has always been the head of S.H.I.E.L.D. until a couple other issues, like iterations and issues. But essentially, the question should be when was S.H.I.E.L.D. created? You can speculate, and I do apologize if this is actually true. I have not seen the Agent Peggy Carter TV series, or I don't think that's the name. But Peggy Carter, I have not seen that TV series. And they probably answered when was S.H.I.E.L.D. created in that series. And I do apologize for me not knowing that one off the top of my head. But it would make sense that S.H.I.E.L.D. was created around the 1950s, or at least a precursor organization was created after the fall of the Nazis and Red Skull during World War II. It makes sense. We do know that obviously Nick Fury has access to Howard Stark's original research because he gives that to Iron Man in, I believe, Iron Man 2 to help him fix the chest piece. But there's a lot of variables that can go into this. I would like to see that maybe the 80s is when we see full funding go to S.H.I.E.L.D., when we see, for example, the fact that the Kree are back and the Skrulls are back in this situation, that we get a little bit more of that. I really would like to see the creation of it, or at least, the hitting the point where we were, like where we are, seeing the power of, that S.H.I.E.L.D. organization finally get the recognition that it deserves. The next one I have is a little bit more specific. I looked at the casting list, and it says Ronan the Accuser is going to be back. I kind of want to see what the Kree's perspective of humanity is, because we know that Ronan is more of a militaristic dictator slash doomsayer, if you will. And he was bringing basically death to the doorstep of many different races and species and whatnot. I mean, if we look at Xandar, for goodness sake, he was going to basically nuke the planet. So, I mean, I kind of want to see where he kind of got his start. We also know that Yondu, he's not Kree. He was sold to Kree slavers at a young age. And I kind of want to see if maybe that plays in a little bit. Because if we take place 20 years before Guardians of the Galaxy, I mean, he looks to be maybe his 40s or 50s or something like that. So this would place him about his 20s and 30s. I don't think he'll actually show up in anything, but I hope at least get a reference to that, just so we at least get an understanding of what it was like for Yondu at a younger age. We also know that there's diplomats in their society because they've interacted with Kree, leaderships and stuff before. But this is the first time we're actually going to see the leader of the Kree, which, if for those who don't know, is the Supreme Intelligence. That is the person who runs the Kree race. Basically, the highest and most intelligent person leads the Kree. And I think, honestly, the biggest thing for me is, what is Ronan going to do? I mean, he's much younger, so we might see a little bit more zealotous, I guess is a good word for it. But we have not seen a villain, return. typically in typical Marvel fashion. The only ones we've ever seen are the ones that turn from evil to good to maybe anti-hero. And that's like your Lokis and your Bucky Barnes, or the Winter Soldier for those who want to use the official term. So this could be an interesting perspective change from Ronan, and I kind of want to see where that goes. I felt that his send-off was a little bit, well, it was very comedic and a little bit lackluster against Star-Lord. But the whole Guardians of the Galaxy is meant to be more of a comedy piece, so to see him in a different light would be nice. I don't think we really saw him as powerful as he could have been, but I would like to see more of that. And honestly, if you're asking if I would change the ending of Guardians of the Galaxy, I would not. Look at that. That is awesome. But anyway, last question I'm going to leave with you guys is, honestly, who is going to be the antagonist? You could probably Google this thanks to IMDb and casting lists and whatnot, and I really feel that that's kind of cheating if I do that part for a little bit. I mean, I looked and I saw Ronan, but I wasn't going to deep dive heavily into who is the who the enemy is. If they haven't ruined it in trailers already, I mean, kudos. If they have, okay. But my personal hope is the religious fanatic known as Vronk. She is kind of like this warrior, priestess, princess kind of thing that exists in the Kree military. And she would tie in very well with the Infinity War, because she, in the comic books, she becomes the leader of the Skrull due to the death of the Throne World. Originally it was by Galactus, but with the Kree being decimated in a snap event, we could easily just remove Galactus from that equation and sub in Thanos, and we get a very linear timeline of seeing, okay, the death and the almost falling of the Kree Empire, thanks to Thanos's, snap. But honestly, guys, I think that's where I'm going to leave this. I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and if you did, please, at least leave a like down below. But like I said, if you have opinions or things you want to question, or, if you want to correct me on certain small details, feel free down in the bottom. I will not stop you. I will at least, be nice and considerate, and don't forget to at least, consider this a discussion. I try and fact check everything I can, but it does take a while to do all that sort of stuff, and I wanted to get this out before the Marvel movie comes out. Anyway, guys, I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, leave a like. Once again, don't forget to comment. Share this video with your friends who have not seen who at least know nothing about Captain Marvel. I believe this could be a little bit informative, especially with the movie right around the corner. But you all stay awesome. Bye, everybody.